think is recording. I can't tell. Hi everybody, welcome back. My name is Keeley and this is my reading nook. Today I'm going to be just going through my August TBR. I've got quite the pile here, so get comfortable and I'm just gonna run through what I'm gonna read this month. It is, when I'm filming this, it's already a little bit into August, so I am already done with one of these books, but I'm still gonna put it in the TBR. It'll still go in my wrap up. I just won't give away too many details of what I think. So yeah, these are the books we have. Settle in and here we go. Alright, so the first book that was on my August TBR, and this is actually the one that I have finished reading, is The Assassin's Blade by Sarah J. Maas. Sarah J. Maas? Sarah J. Maas? I don't know, but it's The Assassin's Blade, and for those of you who know, I might get some people who disagree with the way that I'm reading these books, but essentially my dear friend Abby at home, she's one of my home friends and she is huge into fantasy, and I was speaking with her about how I was in sort of a nonfiction slump and I wasn't really able to get out of it, and she said, you know what, I have this series, I love it, it's so much fun, and I feel like that's the best way to get out of a fiction reading slump, like being stuck in nonfiction, is to read a really fast-paced, super fun fiction novel. And so this is a fantasy series. It's very famous, very popular. Sarah J. Maas has written a few different fantasy series. This one is the prequel in the Throne of Glass series. Another popular one by her is A Court of Thorns and Roses. So you might have heard of that one. This, I believe, was her first book series, and the reason that the way I'm reading this is controversial to some people maybe is because The Assassin's Blade is the prequel, but I believe that it was released after the rest of the series was released. So typically you would have read everything else before reading the prequel, but my dear friend Abby from home, she suggested that I start off with the prequel and then get into the series from there. So that's what I did, and I'll find out later on if I would have rather read it after or before, but I will say that this is essentially the backstory of our main character. I've been saying her name's Selena in my head, but I do think it's probably pronounced differently. It's Celaena. So it's probably like Selena, maybe? But I'm gonna go with Selena for now, and then I'll get corrected and fix it later. But so basically we follow the main character of the Throne of Glass series. Her name is Selena Sardothien, and she is a professional assassin. And we basically follow her on her backstory before the Throne of Glass happens. So it's her during her adventures as an assassin. She's trained, she's in a professional assassins guild, and she gets sent on these missions, and so you watch some of those happen and you see some of the people that she interacts with before the plot line of the Throne of Glass series, which I believe is more so about her competing in a competition, but essentially it's just a super fun, I would call it a YA fantasy series, and I think it definitely got me out of my fiction slump. It took me a second to get into it in the beginning. It was a little bit slow for me at the start, but I'd say as soon as I got to be like a little bit over 100 pages in, I started flying. So I'm giving away too much. I'll talk about it more in my wrap up, but this is on my TBR, and it's because I would like to continue on and read the rest of the series at some point. So that was Throne of Glass. The Assassin's Blade in the Throne of Glass series. I keep doing that. Yeah, so then the next book on my TBR, you'll see my bookmark in it. I'm quite literally maybe 5 pages in, so I'm not that far in at all. But as you can see, this is The Seven Husbands of Evelyn Hugo. Now this one's very popular. This one I've been excited to read for a really long time. I've actually never read anything by Taylor Jenkins Reid. I don't know how that happened, but she seems to be a lot of people's favorite author of all time. Another really popular book by her is Daisy Jones and the Six, and then This summer, Malibu Rising has been really popular by her, so I've been interested in getting into her writing for a long time, and I've seen so many people rate this 5 stars, and so I was like, you know, if I'm going to start off with Taylor Jenkins Reid, I think this one sounded the most interesting to me. And so essentially this is about an old Hollywood star, and she's older. I think she might be even in her 70s, and so she's at the end of her career, and she's pretty reclusive. Like, not many people have gotten a chance to hear from her about the events of her life. Like, she seems to be one of those people that is talked about often by others, but she doesn't really volunteer a bunch of information about herself, so she's kind of like a mythic Hollywood character, but she's a real woman named Evelyn Hugo. And essentially she's getting to the end of her life, and she chooses kind of a relatively unknown woman to write articles about her, an unknown reporter. And so I believe the book is essentially this reporter getting to know Evelyn, learning about her life story, and kind of chronicling for the first time Evelyn's feelings about her own life as opposed to everyone else's feelings about Evelyn. So I'm really excited. I think it's going to be a lot about, like, you know, Hollywood drama, Hollywood gossip, and as you can tell by the title, you follow her romantic life. So she's had 7 different husbands throughout her life. And yeah, I mean, I think it's going to be fascinating so far. I mean, I've read literally 5 pages, so I don't know anything, but so far I've enjoyed it. I know that's saying nothing, but yeah, so I'm excited to get into this one just because so many people have spoken so highly of this book, and also just of Taylor Jenkins Reid generally, like as an author. So yeah, I'm really excited to pick up this one. And like I said, because I already finished The Assassin's Blade, I'm gonna get into The 7 Husbands of Evelyn Hugo this weekend. So I'm getting into that one soon. And then switching it up a little bit, I'm actually going to be going into some nonfiction, which I know I just said that I worked so hard to get myself out of my slump where I was only reading nonfiction, but I just can't help it. I love nonfiction, and specifically I love nonfiction books about our connection to nature as people. And so this is Rachel Carson's The Edge of the Sea. Now, if any of you, I study, you know, like I study within the environmental field at college, and so a lot of you who are familiar with that field might know the name Rachel Carson already. She was the author of Silent Spring, which was a hugely pivotal book. Sorry. It was a hugely pivotal book, I believe in the 1960s, and it was her writing about the effect of pesticides on birds and on the natural world generally. And so it, I believe, catalyzed a lot of really important regulation when it came to pesticides. So hugely impactful writer. She unfortunately died very young from cancer. So a lot of people say, you know, that her work would have even, you know, catapulted even further into different topics of environmentalism. But this is actually her book that's called The Edge of the Sea, and it's said to be kind of like certainly her lesser known work, but some people say that they like it better than Silent Spring. I've actually never read Silent Spring. I'd like to one day. But The Edge of the Sea I actually picked up on a camping trip to Acadia National Park. So you're kind of walking along these rocky cliffs in Maine, and you're thinking a lot about our connection to the ocean, our connection to nature. And for me, as someone who studies in the environmental field, I think a lot about, you know, protecting these things. And so it says on the back, Rachel Carson is best known for Silent Spring, one of the most influential books of the 20th century. But while she was profoundly concerned about the environment as a whole, her deepest passion was for the sea, and many readers consider The Edge of the Sea and her other classics on marine life to be her finest works. So that's what's making me really excited about this, because I've heard so much about Silent Spring, and to think that The Edge of the Sea and her more ocean-related books are actually seen as even better. Yeah, it just makes me really excited to learn more. It's basically, you know, her talking about poetry and science and all of these things that kind of connect at the water's edge. Yeah, so I'm super fascinated by this book. I'm actually going to start an internship in the fall at a marine science nonprofit, and okay. Hi, I think we're back. I believe that the camera that I'm filming on shuts off at 10 minutes, so that's new information, now I know. So anyways, this is The Edge of the Sea. I'm really excited to learn about it. I was just closing off by saying that the reason I wanted to pick this one up and get it done in the month of August is in the month of September when I start school. I'm also going to be starting an internship at a marine science policy center, and their tagline comes from a line in this book. And so I wanted to kind of do some pre-reading for that internship and learn a little bit more about Rachel Carson's work on the ocean. So that's going to be my little mid-month nonfiction breather from the fiction world. And after that, I'm really excited for this one. So, you know, it's August, we're gearing up for school, we're finishing up the summertime, and I didn't get to this one yet, and I intended on getting to Beach Read by Emily Henry during the summer, so I really need to fit this into August, because I just feel like you gotta read this in the summer. You gotta read this during beachy time, you know, when it's really hot out and nice. I don't know though, maybe it would be nice to read this, you know, cozied up over winter break or something, but I'm gonna plan on reading it in the summer. And this is Beach Read by Emily Henry. This one was also hugely popular this year. Emily Henry writes romances. I haven't really read a lot of romances recently, so I'm kind of interested in getting back into it. The most recent romance, I'm looking over there at my bookshelf, and I've been doing that a little bit the whole time, so I'm sorry if you see me doing that. I'm looking at my shelf to see if I've read any romances recently. I mean, Normal People. I've read Normal People, so that counts as a romance, I think, but it's sort of a messed up romance. This, I think, is going to be a little bit more beachy. So I've also heard people describe this book as like too quirky for its own good, so I'm kind of interested to see which side of things I'll land on. I think I'll like it. I don't hate a little bit of quirk. Yeah, so on the back it says that we are following Augustus Everett, and he's a literary fiction author, so, you know, a little bit more highbrow, so to speak, but, you know, who cares. And then we also follow January Andrews, so Augustus in January, August, January, that's pretty quirky. I can see where people are coming from. Yeah, so it seems that she writes romance novels, so it's this literary fiction author, probably brooding kind of guy, and then this woman who writes romance. And so essentially this book is about their romance, but I think it's like an enemies to lovers because of the fact that they're so opposite. Like, their careers are very similar. They're both writers, but they're coming at writing from totally different spheres. And it seems like they strike up a deal to help them out of a creative rut, and essentially Augustus is tasked with writing something in January's genre, which is the romance, and January has to write a literary fiction. So it seems like it'll be really fun. I don't know. It's actually it's longer than I thought. It's not terribly long, but I don't know why I always I don't read a lot of romance, so when I do, I kind of expect it to be like, I don't know if frivolous is the word, but like, I think I need to warm myself up to romance a little bit better, because I think I've been a little bit of a grouch when it comes to romance in the past. Yeah, it looks like it's about 350 pages, so it'll be a really perfect length to kind of get into it and like develop the characters. That's one thing I'll say about like me and romance. I tend to not pick it up as much because I feel like, I don't know what it is, but I feel like the characters never get developed as much as I want them to, as much as they do when you're kind of following one protagonist or something like that in the literary fiction. So either way, I'm really excited for this. I think it'll be fun, even if it's quirky. I think I gotta get myself back into romance, and I'm trying to think if I have any other romances on the shelf. I mean, I am interested in picking up Emily Henry's other book, which is People We Meet on Vacation, I think, which is an interesting one. It's like kind of from what I've heard, you're kind of trying to figure out and dissect like why these two people aren't friends anymore, and then you follow them throughout their vacation, and so that seems really interesting. But I think I'm gonna give this Emily Henry a go and then see how I feel, and then go for the other one if I'm into it. Yeah, so Beach Read by Emily Henry. I'm actually going camping this weekend, and I planned to finish Seven Husbands, but I will probably bring this as well, so those two might get switched in the order because I'm going camping by the beach, and if I go to the beach, I feel like I have to read this. It's just the rule. Okay. So last but certainly not least, I'm going to be picking up a memoir And this is Somebody's Daughter by Ashley C. Ford. I adore the cover. I don't know if you can see that. Oh my god, I feel like I'm a beauty guru. I'm like, can you see that mascara? I love beauty gurus. But anyways, so Somebody's Daughter is a memoir by Ashley C. Ford. And the reason I picked this up, I'm a fan of John Green. I know it's kind of controversial, maybe. You know what? I don't think it's controversial. I like John Green. You know, Looking for Alaska, fantastic book. I wasn't a fan of the Fault in Our Stars movie, but the book was great, guys. It was so good. Don't pretend like you didn't cry. I cried. And so I love John Green. I love the Vlog Brothers, and I love watching their YouTube videos. Sometimes I kind of think about the fact that I'm like a combination of Hank and John, because Hank, among numerous other things, he's now also an author, but he's like a climate scientist and like an ecologist kind of. I feel like he's every kind of scientist. Like, I feel like you could call Hank Green a chemist, a botanist, you know, a zoologist, all the things I feel like you could call Hank Green that. But what I mean to say is that I love reading and I love literature, and so I feel like that's my John side. And then my Hank side is the fact that I study environmentalism and I'm going into like environmental science. So I feel like I'm them combined. Flatter. It's pretty big-headed way to view yourself. But I'm nowhere near as cool as Hank or John Green. But anyways, John posted a video with Ashley C. Ford actually talking about this memoir, Somebody's Daughter. And because of that, you know what I mean, I just kind of was like, I trust you, John. I believe it. I believe this is a good memoir. I also really am fascinated by the memoir genre generally. I read Educated by Tara Westover earlier this year, and I know there's so many people that have talked about this book because it's just so incredible. And so I kind of became fascinated with stories of women and them telling the story of their lives years later. So reflecting upon their childhoods and reflecting upon what was difficult about them, what was beautiful, and kind of finding beauty within that difficulty. And I feel like that's what Tara Westover did such a brilliant job at in Educated. And I think that Ashley C. Ford may also be talented in that regard in her memoir. So I don't know much about her life, but essentially it's gonna be, okay, so it says, one of the most prominent voices of her generation debuts with an extraordinarily powerful memoir, the story of a childhood defined by a looming absence of her incarcerated father. So it looks like it's going to be the story of Ashley C. Ford as a child kind of navigating life without her father in it, and sort of the effects that the U.S. prison system can have on families and have on children. It also says, I feel really embarrassed to say this, but it says that she's one of the most prominent voices of her generation and that she's debuting her memoir, which leads me to believe that she already has released things and is popular and famous, and I just don't know. So, you know, I'll look into that more after I finish up her memoir, Somebody's Daughter, but I love the cover and I just think her story is going to be very powerful. And after reading Educated, I think I was looking for something else that was similar, just people, specifically women, telling the story of, and actually I'm seeing a common thread between the two. In Educated, there's a difficult relationship between Tara and her father, and I think that Ashley C. Ford is going to have that same struggle. So yeah, I'm really excited. It's also really short, which is kind of nice. Like, I feel like for me to leave it for the end of the month is probably nice if I kind of get down to the wire. Yeah, it's 210 pages, so that won't take me that long. Yeah, I'm looking at her author's bio now. It looks like she's a writer for different magazines. Teen Vogue, New York Magazine, the New York Times, Elle, BuzzFeed, and she's in the Forbes 30 Under 30 list for media and variety. And she lives in Indiana. And I'm originally from the Midwest as well, so I like that. And Midwestern growl. Yeah, so that is the final book that I have on my TBR for August. And, you know, I feel like it's kind of... I did it again. I kept talking too long and the camera shut off. But I was just closing out and saying that this is a hefty pile for me. I will say I'm proud of myself for being done with one already. So these are the ones that I have left. And yeah, I will check back in at the end of the month with my August recap, and we'll see what I got to, what I didn't get to, what I liked, what I didn't like. And I realized in my last wrap up, I did not rate the books. I just talked about them. So in this coming wrap up, I'm gonna be sure to give each of the books that I read a rating. And I think that that will kind of help you guys to understand what my real feelings were on there. I'm also going to create a GoodReads account about all of my books, and I'm going to leave that in the description below. But yeah, thank you so much for listening. Thank you so much for joining me in my reading nook. Yeah, feel free to tell me what you plan on reading in August in the comments below, and feel free to like the video if you enjoyed it, and subscribe if you feel like seeing more from me, if you feel like tuning back in to see what I thought about any of these books. Yeah, I'd love for you to join me. So thank you so much for coming, and I'll see you next time. Bye.